Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's January 5th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and this will wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Fridays, so if you're new, be aware of that. I only do them Monday through Thursday, but let's get right to the chart here today. You can see we're still in this range, working sideways. We are working lower. We didn't quite get back to the high of this range on this move back up, and now we're working lower. We closed down. Not quite on the low, but pretty bearish bar. My guess is we'll test this the range low here before it's over, and we may break out of here and go lower. I wouldn't be surprised to see another leg down like this first leg. So at some point, I don't know how this is going to play out here, but that's my expectations that we're going to trade lower here. But there it is on the daily chart. You can see it. Again, we're just continuing to chop sideways in this tight pink range here. And let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart, and we'll take a you'll see what happened was we traded down strongly and then just went sideways. And I kind of had a feeling that's what we might do. There was a couple of other targets to the downside if we went lower. We can talk about those, but after the strong early sell-off, prices just chop sideways with no direction, just like we've been continuing to do here for the last 2 or 3 weeks here. As you can see, we're just going nowhere. Anyway, let's flip over that chart and we'll go through the trade. Okay, here's a look at our intraday chart, our 2000 tick chart, and you can see we had this big sell-off. This came from we had a news item here, non-farm employment changes, basically unemployment type stuff, and you can see that's red, so I'd be flat during this little blue area. And even though we were dropping fairly hard here, it was kind of difficult to find a spot to enter. We had one nice entry there just before the trend ended, and the rest of this was sideways. And this was one of those sideways days that you just had to draw. I mean, you can see we're not consistently off the highs. Maybe this was actually should have been up here like so. Somehow this has moved. We had some consistency right across this level right here. So there is a little bit of consistency down here. But the rest of it, you really had to play these short-term trends and so forth. So needless to say, there's a lot of trades I marked in here, but if you're not good with ranges, this was probably a difficult day. So, but let's zoom in a little closer here and go through the trades. And you can see 7 o'clock came right in here, and you really just didn't have anything. That was really tempting right there. There's a second entry short right here with a really small bar, but it doesn't really make the high, so technically it's not the signal bar. And then it's also above the midline, but below the EMA, so it's kind of right there in the middle of no man's land. And we're way overdue to go back to the other side. As you can see here, we're just kind of working down back that direction. So even though it would have worked, you can see it wasn't but a few minutes till prices did go higher, which is what you would expect there, back to the trend line. So I didn't mark that trade. It's an inside bar. The key is it's like 6 ticks, and it is a second entry, and those are pretty powerful. So based on that, if you took that, it's a little aggressive, but I could see why you might take it. I'll leave it at that. We did get a break of the green trend, moved to a new high, and then made a double top and turned back down. And notice the new high, tried to go higher once, tried to go higher twice. So if it breaks lower there, it's a failed second entry. It's a little bit congested, but it's also really a triple test across there. I don't have a line, but you can see there's a triple test across there. And with that being a failure, you might even go short below that bar, let it break lower, and then drop your limit order 1 tick below that bar and see if it comes back. And it would have come back and filled you before it dropped on down. Too low here. We've already moved too far down to take that as a lower high. We make a new low, and then you get a first entry and another second entry, and then right off the key entry point, another relatively, 11 ticks. That's a great place to go short. And you might have got a runner here. We come over here and you get a first entry, second entry, and so that's a third entry. I think that was a little tough to take, and if you were to draw some kind of a trend line there, you can see we're still inside that, although I think that's more sideways action. I didn't really see it as a trend. But the signal bar is just not good enough. And you can see we didn't go very far, and then we're headed higher. And draw your trend line off those first few lows there. And notice we come back here and you get a first entry, you drop on down, you get a second entry right off the key entry point. It pretty much confirms that key entry point. You get another second entry here, but the bar's too neutral. And it's a shame because that is a great trade. But if you had a better signal bar there than me, by all means, and it's a second entry on the key entry point, take that trade. But mine's just too neutral there. And we get a big overshoot. Earlier, I had this. I mean, maybe it's not an overshoot. Maybe that's a midline. I don't know if it much matters. In the end, to me, it looks more like that's the midline, or that's the challenge. This is a big overshoot. And notice we get outside, we come back in and come back and test that line after we pass through it. We test it once, twice, and then we drop down. And then, of course, you got another first entry and then a second entry. So if it breaks above that one, this was actually the engulfing bar. I don't know if I'd trade that on the engulfing bar. I'd wait until it closes, and it does close bullish enough. We're headed higher again there. Turns down, makes a lower high. You can't go short right there, and you just don't get anything else until you've got a channel working down. You do get a close outside the new low, but then you get a second entry short right here, right at the key, the EMA, the midline of the range, and we just came off the high, so we should be coming back to the low. So I like that second entry right there. If you want to be a little safer, there's a lower high right there again that tests the midline, and we keep going lower, bounces off the lows and heads higher. Again, you get a first entry, second entry. Signal bar is not very good here. There's a lower high here, but we've been twice off the low, so we're probably headed back up here. Turns out we still go lower, but your expectation is we're probably going higher here. If you draw your little trend channel here, you can see that we pretty much get a break of it. So there's your break and new high. So maybe you take that trade right there. I don't know. I just wasn't crazy about it. But anyway, that little trend works down. You get a break, a couple of legs to a new low, and then we're going the other way. And here you get a first entry. Tries to go higher. You get a second entry. It fails. It's also there's a new swing high here, so it's also a first entry, second entry. So it's a failed second entry short. It's a second entry long. It's a good signal bar. It's a little sideways. So I did mark it green. If you measure what you've got there, you can see you've got 6 ticks, which is just enough, but that's pushing it a little bit to try to get a scalp. So for that reason, I made it green. You wouldn't have had any problem getting it, and then but of course you get your close outside, move to a new high, and then this looks like a repeat almost of here and here. So even though we're on the other side, I like that one. And off it does come back. It actually gives you a failure right there. By that time, it looks too congested to me. It looks a little congested already. But at the time you take the first one, there's only 2 bars. But then by this time, you've got 3, 4. It looks a little too congested. So that's the reason I don't like it. Drop down, you get a little failed break lower. And we try to work upwards, but we just kind of really work sideways. And you get a 1, 2, 3 triple test with a nice signal bar there. Back to the upper side, we turn down, and here we ended up going back, and we get a break here, and then there's that same setup again. We drop down, pull back at the EMA, and boom. We saw that setup multiple times here. I didn't color this one, but We're headed back up. Close outside, new high. And here we tried to go up a couple times, and that's not really congestion. Those are just up down bars, but there's too much stem there for me. I don't like that. Um, so I didn't mark that trade, but it would have worked. Notice you're coming down, you try to go higher once, then you try to come up again. It didn't actually break higher, but it's still, we tried to go higher again, and so if it fails, it's going to act probably like a failure, which it did. But I think it's a little too risky. And of course, we move on down, we get a break, move to a new low, and then we're going the other way. And I just don't see anything. There is a first entry, second entry right here, but again, it looks a little congested. It's one you might take. It's a little ways from the EMA. It's not really at the low either. That's the problem, is this is the low. So it's an inside bar, and the fact that it's an inside bar and there's 3 in a row, it just looks like congestion. But we've got a pretty good move going there. That's the first close outside, and this looks pretty bullish. So if you took it, your safety stop would still have to go below the low, and you'd enter 1 tick above that bar. Inside bars are not very reliable. I'd probably skip it. And then, of course, you've already had a break in new high, and then you come back here and you get another second entry. But again, it looks a little sideways. It's an inside bar, and it tries to go higher. It would have worked if you took it, but notice that now you got a break here and 2 legs up, and then you get a triple test with that big bearish bar. I wouldn't be too concerned about entering that on the engulfing bar, but I still like it even after it closes there, after testing that 3 times. And it could be that if there's a range setting up, but let's say it does, the lows are down here, so you got plenty of room left. So, and looks like we try to bounce there, but next thing you know, we move on lower. Then we're working sideways, and this looks a lot like a range here too. But you get another triple test. You definitely got a channel working down, and you get a close outside, and you try to go higher 3 times. Big bearish bar, just go short there. And notice this is a double top, then you try to go higher once, twice. So when that breaks higher and fails and turns down, if it breaks below that bar, that's a failure. And so I like it just to get another leg down. And maybe we're coming back down to the lows. Doesn't turn out that's the case, but with it breaking the channel here and getting a couple of legs, you would expect that, hey, we're probably going to reverse and do something different. And that's what happens. We reverse here. I don't see anything. Again, there's a second entry here, but this is your signal bar. Looks congested. You test the highs again. You try to go higher once, twice. I wouldn't take that on an engulfing bar because it definitely looks congested. But when it ends that bearish, if it breaks below that bar, you want to go with it. Because it's a range day, and you can see we're coming off the high of the range again. And I don't see anything else in here worth taking. And it takes you into 230. And we just kind of, not much happened after that. You can see the volume just starts trickling off here. Nothing. So there it is. Again, we had this big move down, and then we just had a half of that move sized range the rest of the day. And really, you got a trend up, a trend down, mostly sideways here, a trend up, a little short-term trend down, another trend up, a trend down. I mean, price is just no direction there, especially right in here. You have to find these trends really to trade these. And you have to really get down into these more micro trends too, and let them play out for the most part. But there it is. Plenty of trades still. You could find a couple of second entries here. You could find, excuse me, I didn't mean to bump my microphone there. I know sometimes I barely notice it, but it's loud when you hear the video, so if that's loud, I apologize. But these days, I mean, if you have a consistent resistance and consistent support, these are easy to trade because every time you get a setup down here, you just go long, and every time you get a setup up here, you go short. But when they're not consistent and they're turning at different places every time, it's just difficult to to really get a read on it. So it's not easy to do, even if you're a seasoned chart reader. And the reason it's not easy is because prices are just trending one way strong and then reversing, and trending the other way strong and then reversing, and there's no, and when they move it, when they turn at different places each time, this turned down higher each time. This turned down fairly consistent across here, or turned up fairly consistent across here. And then the next time we shoot way up here, and then we only come back down to here. It's just difficult to get a read on it when it's not consistent. It's like a gimme. It's like shooting fish in a barrel when uh, it turns down off this high every time. It turns up off of the high or off the low every time. I mean, when you see it do that every time consistently, just jump in there and buy it when it turns up, and you get a setup, and jump in there and sell it when it turns down. But it's just not very consistent today, and we've had a lot of that lately. So makes it a little harder. So make sure you understand that. But anyway, um, quick week. It was short week because we lost Bundy due to the holiday, but it's a good thing because I need more time to catch up. I'm getting close, so I'm getting. My problem is with my personal issues going on with my mother and stuff. It's just hard for me to ever get completely caught up because I'm in and out so much more than I normally am. But I'm kind of getting used to it now. I'm kind of getting in um, a, a routine with it, and so that's helping. And I'm feeling a lot less pressure to try to catch up because uh, I've learned how to handle it a little better. I guess I should say how to manage it, the different routine a little better. So uh, anyway, just continue to bear with me until I can get back to a completely normal schedule. But for now, I'm going to wrap it up. This is going to wrap up our week. Hope you had a good trading week. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.